I didn't think much of it when my daughter tossed my old calendar into the trash. To Emily, it was just another piece of clutter. Yellowed pages, scribbled notes, a life she believed had no value. But when I quietly pulled it back out and flipped through the worn pages, my hands froze. September 14th. A date circled in red over and over again. My heart stopped, because that was the day she was never supposed to remember. And if she ever found out what really happened on that date, she might never look at me the same way again. Before I tell you the rest, I'd really like to know, have you ever kept something everyone else thought was meaningless, but it meant everything to you? If this story touches you, please like and subscribe. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I always read your comments. Living with your own child and still feeling like a guest in your own home is a kind of loneliness I wouldn't wish on anyone. My name is Kelly Whitman. I'm 62 years old, a widow, and at least on paper, the mother of a successful independent woman named Emily Whitman. We share the same last name, the same roof, and yet most days it feels like we share nothing else. The house we live in sits on a quiet street in Columbus, Ohio. It's the same house my husband David and I bought nearly 35 years ago. Back then, it was full of noise, laughter, arguments over dinner music playing too loud in the kitchen. Now the silence has a different weight. It presses against the walls, settles into the furniture, lingers in the spaces where conversations used to live. Emily moved back in 2 years ago after David passed. At the time, I thought maybe it would bring us closer again. I was wrong. Mom, you really need to stop keeping all this stuff, Emily said one afternoon, standing in the doorway of the living room with her arms crossed. She was dressed the way she always was these days, sharp polished, like she was always on her way to a meeting, even when she wasn't. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her phone always in her hand, her attention divided between whatever I was saying and whatever notification might pop up next. I was sitting in my usual chair by the window, folding an old blanket that had belonged to David. It's not just stuff, I replied gently. Some of it means something. She let out a small laugh, not cruel exactly, but dismissive. It means something to you maybe, but to everyone else, it just looks like clutter. Everyone else. That was something she said a lot, as if there were some invisible audience constantly judging the way I lived. I smiled anyway. I had learned to do that, to smooth over the edges, to make things easier, to avoid turning every conversation into another quiet battle. I'll go through it, I said, just not today. She didn't argue. Emily rarely argued in the traditional sense. She didn't raise her voice or slam doors. Her disapproval came in smaller ways, through tone, through silence, through the way she looked at me like I was something outdated that she hadn't quite figured out how to replace. Okay, she said, already turning away. Just don't wait too long. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway, and a moment later, I heard the soft click of her bedroom door. I sat there for a while, the folded blanket in my lap, staring out the window at the empty street. There was a time when Emily used to run through that front yard barefoot, her hair tangled, her laugh echoing down the block. She used to come to me with everything: scraped knees, broken friendships, secrets whispered late at night when she couldn't sleep. Now most days, I didn't even know what time she'd be home. Sometimes I wondered when the shift had happened. It hadn't been sudden. It was quieter than that, a slow pulling away. Fewer conversations, shorter answers. A distance that grew so gradually I didn't notice it until it was already too wide to cross. After David died, that distance seemed to double overnight. Grief does strange things to people. It rearranges what matters. It hardens some parts and breaks others. For me, it left an emptiness I didn't know how to fill. For Emily, it turned into something sharper. "You can't just sit here all day, Mom," she had said a few weeks after the funeral, standing exactly where she stood now, arms crossed, eyes tired but firm. "You need to do something. Join a club, volunteer, anything." "I'm trying," I had told her, but I don't think she ever believed me. To her, I think I became a reminder of something she didn't want to face. Loss. Slowness. The idea that life doesn't always move forward the way you plan. So she pushed. Not with anger, but with impatience. And I stayed quiet. It was easier that way. That evening, Emily came home late. I heard the front door open just after 9, the familiar sound of her keys dropping into the ceramic bowl by the entrance. "I'm home," she called out. "I'm in the kitchen," I replied. I had made dinner chicken roasted vegetables, the kind of meal I used to make when David was still here. I set a plate out for her, even though I wasn't sure she would eat. She walked in, setting her bag down on the counter, already scrolling through her phone. "You didn't have to do that," she said, glancing at the plate. "I know," I said softly. "I wanted to." She hesitated for a moment, then pulled out a chair and sat down. For a few minutes, we ate in silence. The only sounds were the clink of utensils against plates and the faint hum of the refrigerator. "It's good," she said finally. "Thank you." That should have been enough. A small moment of connection, something to hold on to. But then she added, almost as an afterthought, "You should really think about simplifying things around here, though. The house feels heavy." Heavy. I looked around the kitchen. The same cabinets, the same table, the same walls that had held our lives together for decades. "Maybe," I said. What I didn't say was that every object she wanted to get rid of carried a piece of our history. Every drawer, every shelf, every old notebook or calendar, it all meant something. Not because it was useful, but because it was proof that we had lived, that we had mattered, that moments hadn't simply disappeared. Emily didn't see it that way. To her, the past was something to organize, minimize, and when necessary, throw away. Later that night, after she had gone to her room, I walked slowly through the house, turning off lights, straightening small things that didn't really need straightening. I paused in the hallway outside the spare room where I kept most of the old items Emily disliked so much. Boxes stacked neatly, shelves filled with years of quiet memories. I opened the door and stepped inside. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing in the familiar scent of paper and time. Somewhere in this room was the calendar, the one she had thrown away earlier that day. I hadn't gone to get it yet. I told myself I didn't need to, that it was just an object like she said, that I should let it go. But something about the way she had tossed it aside, something about that careless motion, it stayed with me. I turned off the light and closed the door, telling myself I would deal with it tomorrow. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept circling back over and over again. September 14th. Even without the calendar in my hands, I could see it clearly. The red circle. The ink pressed harder into the page than anywhere else. A date I had promised myself I would never forget. A date that had changed everything. And now, for the first time in years, I had a feeling it might not stay buried much longer. The next morning, I woke up with that same uneasy feeling still sitting in my chest. It wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was quieter than that, like something waiting, something that hadn't been finished yet. Emily had already left for work by the time I came into the kitchen. Her coffee cup was in the sink, her chair pushed back just enough to show she'd been in a hurry. The house was silent again. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space where she had been. Then my eyes drifted toward the back door. The trash bins were still out. I don't know why I hesitated. Maybe part of me knew that once I picked that calendar back up, I wouldn't be able to pretend it didn't matter anymore. But pretending hadn't worked very well so far. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed a light sweater, and stepped outside. The morning air was cool, carrying that faint smell of damp grass and distant traffic. The kind of quiet suburban morning that used to feel peaceful. Now it just felt. The morning air was cool, carrying that faint smell of damp grass and distant traffic. The kind of quiet suburban morning that used to feel peaceful. Now it just felt empty. The trash bin sat at the edge of the driveway, the lid slightly open. I walked toward it slowly, my heart beating a little faster than it should have for something so simple. "It's just a calendar," I murmured to myself. But my hands didn't believe that. I lifted the lid. Inside, there were old newspapers, a broken picture frame, a stack of mail, and there, halfway buried beneath everything else, was the calendar. For a second, I just stood there looking at it. The cover was bent now, one corner slightly torn. Something about that small damage made my chest tighten more than it should have. Careful, Kelly, I thought. It's just paper. But it wasn't. I reached in, brushing aside the other items, and pulled it out. Dust clung to the edges. The pages felt softer than I remembered, worn from years of being handled, flipped through, held onto. I closed the lid of the trash bin and stood there for a moment, holding it against my chest. Like I had just rescued something alive. Back inside, I didn't go to the kitchen. Instead, I walked straight to the living room and sat down in my chair by the window. The same chair Emily said I spent too much time in. I placed the calendar on my lap and stared at it. "You're being ridiculous," I whispered. But even as I said it, my fingers were already opening the cover. The first few pages were exactly as I remembered. Notes written in my handwriting, grocery lists, doctor appointments, small reminders of ordinary days. But those weren't the pages that mattered. I turned them slowly, one by one, until I reached September. Even before I saw the date, I felt it, that tightening in my chest, that pull in my memory. And then, there it was, September 14th, circled in red ink. Not just once, twice. The pen had pressed so hard into the paper that it left a faint imprint on the page beneath it. Like I had needed to make absolutely sure it could never be ignored. Next to it, in smaller writing, there were only 2 words. "Don't forget." My breath caught. I hadn't written anything else. No explanation. No details. Just those 2 words. As if I had been afraid that even writing too much would make it real in a way I couldn't control. For a long moment, I just stared at it. And then, like a door opening somewhere deep inside me, the memories began to come back. Not all at once, but enough. The sound of a phone ringing. Late. Too late for anything good. I blinked, shaking my head slightly, trying to steady myself. "No," I whispered. "Not now. But memory doesn't listen when you tell it to wait." My fingers tightened around the edges of the calendar as I leaned back in the chair, closing my eyes for just a second. And that's when I heard it. "Mom." I opened my eyes immediately. Emily was standing in the doorway. I hadn't even heard her come back. You're still here? I asked, my voice catching slightly. She stepped into the room, frowning. I forgot my laptop, she said, her eyes already scanning the space. Then they landed on the calendar in my hands. There was a brief pause. What's that? She asked. My grip tightened instinctively. Nothing, I said quickly. Just something I found. She walked closer, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Is that one of the things I threw out yesterday? Her tone wasn't accusatory. Not exactly, but there was something in it, curiosity mixed with a faint edge of annoyance. I just wanted to look through it, I replied. Why? She asked, folding her arms. It's not like there's anything important in there. The words hit harder than they should have. I forced a small smile. Sometimes things are important even if they don't look like it. Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. Mom, that's exactly what I mean, she said. You hold on to everything like it has some deep meaning. It's exhausting. Exhausting. I lowered my gaze to the calendar, my thumb brushing lightly over the red circle. If only she knew. I'll put it away, I said quietly. She hesitated for a moment, then leaned slightly to get a better look. What's that? She asked. My heart skipped. What? That page, she said, pointing. Why is that date circled like that? She hesitated for a moment, then leaned slightly to get a better look. What's that? She asked. My heart skipped. What, that page, she said, pointing. Why is that date circled like that? For a second, I couldn't breathe. It's nothing, I said too quickly. Emily's eyes narrowed just a little. Doesn't look like nothing, she replied. She reached out before I could react, and gently but firmly took the edge of the calendar, tilting it toward herself. Her eyes moved across the page. September 14th. The red circle. The words. Don't forget. She went still. What is this? She asked, her voice quieter now. I stood up too fast, the chair scraping against the floor. It's just an old note, I said. It doesn't matter. But even as I said it, I could see the shift in her expression. The curiosity had changed. It had sharpened. You don't circle something like that for no reason, she said slowly. Emily, what happened on that day? She pressed. I shook my head. It's in the past. It's not important. She stared at me, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't look dismissive. She looked interested, suspicious. You're lying, she said. The words landed between us like something fragile breaking. I'm not, I replied, but my voice wasn't steady enough to convince either of us. Emily took a step back, still holding the calendar. Then tell me, she said. I opened my mouth and then closed it again, because I knew in that moment that once I said it out loud, there would be no taking it back. It's nothing you need to worry about, I said finally. That was the wrong answer. I saw it immediately in the way her expression hardened again. But this time, it wasn't dismissal. It was determination. Fine, she said, handing the calendar back to me, but her eyes didn't leave my face. If you won't tell me, I'll find out myself. And just like that, she turned and walked out of the room. The front door opened, closed. Silence again. I stood there, the calendar trembling slightly in my hands, because deep down, I knew she meant it. And for the first time in years, September 14th wasn't just a memory anymore. It was about to become a problem. I didn't move for a long time after Emily left. The house fell back into that same heavy silence, but it didn't feel the same anymore. It felt unstable, like something had been disturbed that wasn't supposed to be. I was still standing in the living room, the calendar clutched in my hands, my fingers pressing into the paper, where that red circle sat. September 14th. Don't forget. I didn't forget. I whispered, my voice barely audible. I never could. Slowly, I sank back into the chair by the window, my body feeling heavier than it had just minutes before. The sunlight that had felt soft and warm earlier now seemed too bright, too exposed. Emily's words echoed in my head. If you won't tell me, I'll find out myself. That wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And Emily had always been the kind of person who followed through. I looked down at the calendar again, tracing the edge of the circle with my thumb. I had written it years ago, but I could still remember exactly how my hand had trembled when I did it. The pen pressing too hard, the ink slightly bleeding into the paper. As if part of me had known that one day this date would come back to demand something from me. I closed my eyes. And this time, I didn't try to stop it. The memory came faster now, stronger. Like it had been waiting. It had been raining that night. Not a gentle rain, the kind that taps softly on windows and lulls you to sleep. This was louder, harder, the kind that makes the world feel smaller, darker. I remember because I had been awake. David had already gone to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I had been sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had long since gone cold, staring at nothing in particular. We had been trying for years. That's the part no one ever talks about. The quiet disappointment, the doctor visits, the hopeful conversations that slowly turn into silence. We had wanted a child so badly, but life had other plans. So when the phone rang that night, I almost didn't answer it. It was past midnight. Calls at that hour rarely brought anything good, but something made me pick it up. Hello. There was a pause, then a voice I didn't immediately recognize. Is this Kelly Whitman? Yes, I said, sitting up a little straighter. My name is Linda Carter. I'm a social worker with Franklin County. My stomach tightened. Social worker, I'm sorry, I think you may have the wrong number, I said. No, ma'am, she replied gently. Your name came up as an emergency contact. That made even less sense. I don't understand, I said. Another pause. And then, there's a child here, she said. A little girl, about 3 years old. She was brought in tonight under difficult circumstances. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. What does that have to do with me? I asked. We found your name on a piece of paper in her belongings, Linda said. Just your name. No number. But we were able to track it down. I frowned, my mind racing. I don't know any... She keeps saying something, Linda interrupted softly. A name. Over and over again. I swallowed. What name? There was a brief silence. Then Kelly. My hand tightened around the phone. That's not possible, I whispered. I understand this is confusing, Linda said. But we need someone to come down here. Someone she recognizes. Or at least feels safe with. Safe. That word settled into me like a weight. I think you have the wrong person, I said again, but my voice didn't sound as certain anymore. Ma'am, Linda said gently, I wouldn't be calling at this hour if it wasn't important. I looked down the hallway toward the bedroom where David was sleeping. I should have woken him. I should have asked questions. I should have said no. But something inside me, something I couldn't explain, was already making the decision. Where are you? I asked. The drive there felt longer than it actually was. The rain made everything blur, the streetlights, the road signs, the edges of the world. My windshield wipers moved back and forth in a steady rhythm that did nothing to calm the unease growing inside me. I kept thinking about what Linda had said. A little girl. She keeps saying your name. It didn't make sense. None of it did. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the county building, my hands were shaking slightly. The building itself was plain, functional. The kind of place people went when something had already gone wrong. I sat in the car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. You can still leave, I told myself. You can pretend this isn't your problem. But I didn't move, because deep down, I already knew I wasn't going to leave. I stepped out into the rain, pulling my coat tighter around me as I hurried toward the entrance. Inside, the air was too bright, too sterile. A woman stood near the front desk, looking around as if she was waiting for someone. When our eyes met, she walked toward me. "Kelly Whitman?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm Linda Carter," she said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Thank you for coming." "What's going on?" I asked, my voice lower than I intended. She hesitated, just for a second. "Why don't you come with me?" she said. That hesitation didn't go unnoticed. It made everything feel worse. I followed her down a narrow hallway, the sound of our footsteps echoing against the tile floor. "Where are her parents?" I asked. Linda didn't answer right away. "They're not able to care for her," she said finally. Something in the way she said it told me there was more to that story. A lot more. We stopped in front of a closed door. Linda turned to me. "I need to prepare you," she said gently. "She's been through a lot tonight. She may be scared. She may not respond right away." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I understood any of this. "And she's been asking for you," Linda added. My heart skipped again. "I don't even know her," I said. Linda held my gaze. "Sometimes," she said softly, "children know things we don't." Then she opened the door. And in that moment, everything I thought I understood about my life, about my future, about who I was supposed to be, shifted. Because sitting in the corner of that room, curled up in a chair that was too big for her, was a little girl. Small, silent, watching the door like she had been waiting for it to open. She was smaller than I expected. That was the first thing I noticed. Not just small for her age, but fragile. Like something that had been handled too roughly for too long. Her knees were pulled up to her chest, her arms wrapped tightly around them as if she were trying to make herself disappear into the corner of that oversized chair. Her hair was tangled damp in places, and her clothes looked like they hadn't been changed in days. But it was her eyes that held me, wide, dark, and locked onto me the second I stepped into the room. She didn't blink, didn't move, just watched. "Hi," I said softly, unsure of what else to say. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too. Careful, too controlled, like I was afraid even sound might scare her away. She didn't answer. Linda stepped in behind me, her presence quiet but steady. "It's okay," she said gently to the little girl. "This is Kelly." At the sound of my name, something shifted. It was small, barely noticeable. But I saw it. The girl's grip around her knees loosened just slightly. Her shoulders dropped, not fully but enough to suggest recognition. And then in a voice so quiet, I almost thought I imagined it. "Kelly." My breath caught. "Yes," I said, taking a slow step forward. "That's me." She stared at me for another long moment, as if she were trying to decide something. Then slowly, she lowered her legs from the chair and stood. She was unsteady at first, like she wasn't used to being on her feet. I instinctively moved closer. "It's okay," I said again. "You're safe." The word felt heavy in my mouth. Safe. Linda had used it earlier too. But standing there looking at this child, I realized something that made my chest tighten. She didn't look like she believed that word meant anything anymore. The girl took a few small steps toward me. 1, 2. Then she stopped, close enough that I could see the faint bruise on her arm. Close enough that I could smell something faint, like rain, and something else I didn't want to identify. "Do you know me?" I asked gently. She hesitated, then shook her head. That made sense. Of course it did. But then she said something that didn't. "You came," she whispered. I felt something shift inside me. "What do you mean?" I asked. She looked down at the floor, her voice barely audible. "They said you would come." My heart began to beat faster. "Who said that?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out hesitant, unsure, and grabbed the edge of my sleeve. Just a small grip, but enough. And in that moment, something settled, not logically, not in a way I could explain, but in a way that felt undeniable. Like this child, this complete stranger, had somehow already decided I belonged to her. And worse, part of me felt like she was right. I looked back at Linda, my expression full of questions I didn't know how to ask. Linda gave a small nod, as if to say, "I know." "Why don't you sit down?" she suggested gently. I guided the girl back to the chair, sitting beside her this time, instead of across from her. She didn't let go of my sleeve. Not once. "What's her name?" I asked quietly. Linda hesitated. "We're not entirely sure," she admitted. That answer hit harder than I expected. "What do you mean you're not sure? She's given us a few different names," Linda explained. "None of them match any official records we've been able to find so far." I looked down at the little girl beside me. "What should I call you?" I asked softly. She was quiet for a moment, then barely above a whisper, "Emily." The name settled into the room like it had been waiting there. Emily. I didn't know why, but it felt right. "Okay," I said gently. "Emily." She looked up at me then, and for the first time, there was something in her eyes that wasn't fear. It wasn't trust, exactly, but it was closer to it than anything else I had seen so far. "Emily," I repeated softly. "That's a beautiful name." She didn't smile, but her grip on my sleeve tightened just a little. Linda stepped forward slightly. "Kelly," she said quietly, "we need to talk." I nodded, though I didn't want to leave the girl's side. "It'll be right here," I told Emily. She didn't answer, but she didn't let go either. I gently slipped my sleeve from her hand and stood following Linda just outside the room, leaving the door slightly open. "What's going on?" I asked in a low voice. Linda exhaled slowly. "She was found earlier tonight," she said. "Neighbors reported loud noises, yelling, things breaking. When officers arrived, things breaking. When officers arrived, the apartment was in bad shape." My stomach turned, and her parents, Linda's expression tightened. "They weren't in a condition to care for her," she said carefully. "There are indications of long-term neglect. Possibly worse, the apartment was in bad shape." My stomach turned, And her parents? Linda's expression tightened. They weren't in a condition to care for her, she said carefully. There are indications of long-term neglect. Possibly worse. I closed my eyes briefly. And she had my name? I asked. Linda nodded. In her pocket, she said. A small piece of paper. Just your name, written in what looks like adult handwriting. That doesn't make any sense, I said. I've doesn't make any sense, I said. I've never seen her before tonight. I believe you, Linda said. But I pressed. But she's been asking for you, Linda replied. Consistently. Since she arrived. I shook my head. There has to be some kind of mistake. He never seen her before tonight. I believe you, Linda said, but I pressed. But she's been asking for you, Linda replied. Consistently, since she arrived. I shook my head. There has to be some kind of mistake. Maybe Linda said, but right now, you're the only person she's responded to. I glanced back into the room. Emily was still sitting there exactly where I had left her. But now she was watching the doorway, watching me, waiting. What happens to her now? I asked. Linda's voice softened. If we can't locate a suitable guardian or relative, shall be placed into temporary foster care. Foster care. The words echoed in my mind. I looked at the girl again. The way she sat, the way she waited, the way she had reached for me like I was something she needed, something she trusted, even though she had no reason to. I don't think that's a good idea, I said quietly. Linda studied me. What are you saying? I hesitated. Because once I said it, everything would change. I'm saying I took a breath. She shouldn't be with strangers. Linda's eyes searched mine. And you're not a stranger? She asked gently. I didn't have an answer for that, not a logical one. But the feeling in my chest, the one that had started the moment I saw her, it hadn't gone away. If anything, it had grown stronger. I don't know what I am, I admitted, but I know I can't just walk away from her. Linda was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. Then we need to talk about what that means, she said. I looked back at the room one more time, at the little girl who had somehow found her way into my life on a night I would never forget. September 14th. Even then, I think I knew that this wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of something I wouldn't be able to undo, and maybe wouldn't want to. I didn't sleep that night. Even now, all these years later, I can still remember the way the clock on the wall seemed louder than usual. Each second ticking forward like it was pushing me towards something I couldn't take back. David had woken up when I came home. He was standing in the hallway when I walked through the front door, still in his robe, his expression filled with confusion and concern. Kelly. What happened? He asked. I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know where to begin. She's here, I said, finally. David frowned. Who's here? The little girl, I replied. The one from the call. He blinked clearly, trying to process that. You went? He asked, his tone shifting slightly. I nodded. I couldn't just ignore it. That part at least he understood. David had always been the kind of man who believed that when something called for you, you answered. No matter how inconvenient. You answered. No matter how inconvenient. No matter how complicated. But this was different. What's going on? He asked again, more seriously this time. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. They want someone need to take her. At least temporarily. no matter how complicated. But this was different. What's going on? He asked again, more seriously this time. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. They want someone to take her, at least temporarily. David stared at me. And you volunteered? He asked carefully. I said I couldn't leave her there, I replied. That's not the same thing, Kelly. I looked at him then. I know, I said softly, but it feels like it is. We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of what I was saying settling between us. We don't know anything about her, David said. We don't know her background, her situation. She has no one? I interrupted quietly. David ran a hand over his face. And that's terrible, he said, but it doesn't mean we're the solution. I swallowed. She asked for me. That stopped him. What? She kept saying my name, I said, over and over again. They found it written on a piece of paper in her pocket. David frowned. That doesn't make any sense. I know. So how does she know you? I don't know, I admitted, but when I saw her, my voice trailed off, because I didn't have the words for it. David watched me carefully. What are you not saying? He asked. I hesitated. Then I said it. It felt like she was already mine. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew how they sounded. Too fast, too emotional, too dangerous. David exhaled slowly. Kelly, he began. I know, I said quickly. I know how this sounds. But you didn't see her. That's exactly my point, he replied. I didn't see her, and neither did you, at least not until tonight. He stepped closer, his voice gentler now. You're reacting to something emotional. That doesn't mean it's right. I'm not saying it is, I said, but it doesn't feel wrong either. David didn't respond immediately. He had always been more careful than me, more logical. He liked to think things through to weigh every possibility before making a decision. That was part of why we worked so well together. But this wasn't something that could be measured or planned. This was something else. She needs someone, I said quietly. David looked at me for a long moment. And you think that someone is you? Yes, he sighed. Kelly, we've been down this road before. The words hit harder than I expected. I knew what he meant. The years of trying, the disappointment, the quiet grief we never quite talked about. This isn't the same, I said. Isn't it? He asked gently. It's not about what we want, I replied. It's about what she needs. David looked away for a moment, his jaw tightening slightly. That's exactly what scares me, he said. Why? Because when you start making decisions based on need instead of reality, you don't always see the consequences. I didn't have an answer for that, because he wasn't wrong. But neither was I. She's going into foster care if we don't step in, I said. And there are good foster homes, David replied. And there are bad ones, I countered. Silence again. That kind of silence that doesn't mean the conversation is over, just that it's reached a place where neither person knows what to say next. David finally looked back at me. What are they asking for? He said. For now, temporary placement, I answered. Until they figure out what to do long term. And after that, they don't know yet. David nodded slowly. That's the problem, he said. I stepped closer. No, I said softly. That's the reality. He studied my face, and I knew what he was seeing. Not just determination, but something deeper. Something that had been missing for a long time. That had been missing for a long time. Hope. You've already made up your mind, haven't you? He asked. I hesitated, because part of me wanted to say no, wanted to pretend that this was still a discussion, that I was still weighing options. But the truth was, hope. You've already made up your mind, haven't you? He asked. I hesitated, because part of me wanted to say no, wanted to pretend that this was still a discussion, that I was still weighing options. But the truth was, the moment that little girl had reached for me, the moment she said my name, something had already been decided. I don't think I can walk away from her, I admitted. David closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again. And if this turns into something permanent? He asked. My heart skipped. I don't know, I said honestly. But I do know that if I leave her there tonight, I swallowed hard. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. That was the moment everything changed. Not because of what I said, but because of the way David looked at me afterward. He didn't argue, didn't try to convince me otherwise. Instead, he nodded. Just once. Then we do it right, he said. Relief flooded through me so quickly it almost made me dizzy. What do you mean? I mean, we don't rush into anything blindly, he said. We talk to the social worker. We understand the situation. We make sure we're actually able to provide what she needs. I nodded quickly. Yes, of course. And Kelly, he added. I looked at him. We don't hide anything from each other in this process. Something about the way he said that made a flicker of unease pass through me, but I pushed it aside. Of course not, I said. At the time, I believed that. I truly did. By the next morning, everything was moving faster than I expected. Paperwork, phone calls, conversations with Linda, assessments, questions I didn't always know how to answer. But through all of it, Emily, little Emily, never left my side. She followed me from room to room at the county office, always just a step behind, always watching. And every time I turned around, she was there, waiting, trusting, as if she had already decided that I was hers. And maybe that was the moment I made the biggest decision of my life, because I stopped thinking of her as a child who needed help and started thinking of her as my child. No matter what it cost, bringing her home didn't feel real. Even now, when I think back to that day, it feels like something that happened to someone else. Someone braver, or maybe just more reckless than I had ever been. But I remember every detail. The way Emily, my Emily, now sat in the back seat of the car, completely silent. The way she didn't ask questions, didn't cry, didn't fidget. She just watched. Always watching. I kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror as I drove, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. You doing okay back there? I asked softly at one point. She nodded. Just once. That was all. David had insisted on coming with me to pick her up after everything was approved for temporary placement. He sat in the passenger seat, unusually quiet, his gaze fixed out the window most of the drive. He wasn't against this, but he wasn't comfortable either. I could feel it, and part of me understood why. We were stepping into something we didn't fully understand, something that didn't follow logic, something that had started with a phone call in the middle of the night and a little girl who somehow knew my name. By the time we pulled into the driveway, the sky had cleared. The rain from the night before was gone, leaving everything looking cleaner than it actually was. Here we are, I said, gently turning off the engine. Emily didn't move right away. I opened my door, then walked around to the back seat and opened hers. She looked up at me. Is this your house? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. It's ours for now. She hesitated, then slowly climbed out of the car. She stood there for a moment, looking at the house like she was trying to understand it, not admiring it, not judging it, just studying it. David stepped out and came around, offering her a small, careful smile. Hi, Emily, he said. I'm David. She looked at him for a second, then nodded. Hi. That was it, no more, no less. David glanced at me briefly, and I could tell he was already trying to figure her out. But Emily didn't give much away. She rarely did. Inside, everything felt different. The same furniture, the same walls, the same quiet. But now there was something else. A presence. A shift. I led her into the living room. You can sit here, I said, gesturing to the couch. She didn't sit. Instead, she stayed close to me, close enough that I could feel the slight tension in her body. She can stay in the spare room, David said quietly. I nodded. I already set it up. The spare room had always been just a room, storage mostly. Old boxes, things we didn't use but couldn't quite let go of. That morning before we went to pick her up, I had cleared it out, changed the sheets, added a small lamp, tried to make it feel like something more than an afterthought. Do you want to see your room? I asked Emily. She looked up at me again. Mine. The word hit me harder than it should have. Yes, I said gently. Yours. She hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. I took her hand, not tightly, just enough to guide her, and led her down the hallway. When we reached the door, I paused. This is it, I said. She stepped inside slowly. Her eyes moved around the room, taking everything in. The bed, the dresser, the small window, the lamp. It wasn't much, but to her, it seemed like something more. Do you like it? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the bed and touched the blanket, running her fingers over the fabric like she was testing whether it was real. Then she looked at me. Can I stay here? She asked. The question was so simple, so small, but it carried something much bigger underneath it. Of course, I said, my voice softer than I intended. That's why you're here. She nodded again. Then, without warning, she sat down on the bed and pulled her knees up to her chest. The same position she had been in at the county office. Safe. Contained. I felt something tighten in my chest. Do you need anything? I asked. She shook her head. Okay, I said. I'll be right outside if you do. I started to turn. Kelly, I stopped immediately and looked back at her. Yes, she hesitated, then asked, You won't leave, right? The words hit me like something physical. I'm not going anywhere, I said gently. She studied my face like she was trying to decide whether to believe me. Then she nodded, and for the first time, she lay down. Still curled slightly, still guarded, but resting. I quietly closed the door behind me. David was waiting at the hallway. Well, he asked. She likes it, I said. He nodded. That's good. We stood there for a moment, both listening to the silence on the other side of the door. She's different, he said carefully. I know. No, I mean... He paused, searching for the right words. She's not acting like most kids her age. She's been through a lot, I replied. David nodded slowly. I'm sure she has. There was something in his tone that made me look at him more closely. What is it? I asked. He hesitated, then said, Kelly, are you absolutely certain you've never seen her before? The question made my stomach tighten. Yes, I said. Because the way she looks at you, I noticed. I said quietly. It's like she knows you, he continued. I didn't respond, because that was exactly what I had been trying not to think about. David leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. And the paper with your name on it? He added. That doesn't just happen. I know. So, what are we missing? I shook my head. I don't know. But even as I said it, something in the back of my mind shifted. A thought. A memory. Not fully formed, but there, waiting. I'll figure it out, I said finally. David studied me for a moment, then nodded. Just be careful, he said. Of what? Of getting too attached too fast. The words stung, but I understood why he said them. I'll try, I replied. But deep down, I already knew I had failed that, because somewhere between that phone call and that moment in the room when she said my name, I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. That night, the house didn't feel as empty. For the first time in years, there was movement in the hallway. Soft footsteps. A door opening, closing. At one point, I heard her voice, just a whisper from down the hall. Kelly! I got up immediately and went to her room. She was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide in the dim light. I'm here, I said gently. She relaxed just a little. Okay, she whispered. Do you need something? I asked. She shook her head. Then after a pause, just checking. I stayed there for a few minutes, sitting on the edge of the bed until her breathing slowed again. And as I watched her drift back to sleep, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. But mixed with it was something else. Something quieter. More unsettling, because deep down I still didn't know why she had my name, and I had a feeling that answer was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. The first few weeks felt fragile. That's the only word I can use for it. Like everything we were building with Emily, every small moment, every quiet interaction could break if we moved too fast or said the wrong thing. She didn't cry, not once, and somehow that worried me more than anything else. Most children, especially ones who had been through what she had, would cry. They would act out. They would demand attention, reassurance, something. But Emily, she observed. She listened. She adjusted, too quickly. By the third day, she already knew where everything was in the house. The kitchen drawers, the bathroom cabinets, the exact way the floor creaked near the hallway. It was like she had trained herself to memorize spaces, to survive them. Do you want cereal? I asked one morning, standing in the kitchen. She was already sitting at the table, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Yes, she said quietly. Okay, I smiled. We have Cheerios or Cheerios is fine, she said quickly. Too quickly. Like she didn't want to seem difficult. I poured the cereal into a bowl and set it in front of her. Do you like milk? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. I poured a little, not too much. I had started to notice that she preferred things that way, controlled, predictable. Thank you, she said. That was something else. She said, thank you for everything, every meal, every glass of water, every time I handed her something. At first, I thought it was just politeness, but then I realized it was something else, something learned, something necessary. David noticed it too. "She's trying not to be a problem," he said one evening after she had gone to bed. We were sitting in the living room, the television on, but neither of us really watching it. "I know," I replied softly. "That's not normal for a kid her age," he added. "No," I said. "It's not." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "She's too careful," he said. I didn't argue with that, because he was right. Emily didn't run, didn't shout, didn't make messes. She moved through the house like she was afraid of taking up too much space, like she had learned that being invisible was safer than being seen. And that thought stayed with me. A few days later, I found her standing in the hallway staring at a framed photo on the wall. It was an old one, David and me years ago, smiling in front of the house, taken long before Emily came into our lives. She was so still that I almost didn't notice her at first. "What are you looking at?" I asked gently. She turned slightly, glancing at me. "You look happy," she said. Her voice wasn't sad, just factual. "We were," I said. She looked back at the photo. Before me, she asked. The question caught me off guard. "No," I said quickly. "Not before you. Just at a different time." She nodded slowly, as if she understood more than she should. "Do you have other pictures?" she asked. "I do," I said. "Would you like to see them?" She hesitated, then nodded. I led her into the living room and pulled out an old photo album from the shelf. We sat together on the couch, flipping through the pages. There were pictures of family gatherings, holidays, moments frozen in time. She studied each one carefully. Not like a child looking at pictures, but like someone searching for something. "Who's that?" she asked, pointing to a picture of David holding a baby. "That's my sister's son," I said. "Your cousin, technically." She nodded. "And this?" she asked, pointing to another photo. "That's David's parents," I replied. She went quiet for a moment, then asked, "Where am I?" The question hung in the air. I swallowed. "These were taken before you came to us," I said gently. She looked at me, her eyes searching. "How did I come to you?" she asked. There it was. The question I knew would come eventually, but not this soon. I felt my chest tighten. "We've talked about this a little," I said carefully. "You came to stay with us because you needed a safe place." She nodded. "I know that part," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "But how did you find me?" she asked. I hesitated, because I didn't have an answer that made sense, not one I could explain to a child. "I got a call," I said finally. "From who?" "A woman named Linda. She works with families and children, and she told you to come get me." "Yes." Emily looked down at the photo album, her fingers resting lightly on the page. "Why did she call you?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, because that was the question I had been asking myself since the very beginning. "I'm not sure," I said honestly. She looked up at me again. "But I knew I needed to come," I added. She studied my face, and for a moment I thought she might ask more, push further. But she didn't. Instead, she closed the album gently. "Okay," she said, just like that. No argument, no confusion, just acceptance. But something about that worried me, because it didn't feel like she was satisfied. It felt like she was storing the question, saving it for later. That night, after she had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room again. The calendar was in my lap. Open. September 14th, staring back at me. Don't forget. I hadn't, not for a single day. But now, it wasn't just my memory anymore. Emily was starting to ask questions, And I didn't know how long I could keep giving her half answers. Because the truth, the full truth, wasn't something you could explain gently. It wasn't something you could ease into. It was something that would change everything. I ran my fingers over the red circle again, thinking about that night, the rain, the phone call, the moment everything shifted, and for the first time since bringing her home. A thought crept in that I couldn't ignore. What if she didn't just know my name? What if someone had given it to her, deliberately? The idea made my stomach turn, because if that was true, then this wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It was something else, something planned. And if that was the case, then the past I thought I understood was about to become a lot more complicated. It didn't happen all at once. Emily didn't suddenly become curious or demanding overnight. That wasn't her way. She moved carefully, quietly, like someone who had learned that the safest way to find answers was not to ask too many questions too quickly. But I could feel it. The shift. It started with small things, lingering glances, longer pauses after I spoke, moments where she looked like she was about to ask something and then changed her mind. And then, one afternoon, it finally happened. I had left the calendar on the kitchen counter. That was my first mistake. I didn't even realize I had done it. I had been flipping through it earlier that morning, lost in thought, and when I heard the phone ring, I had set it down without closing it. Open, to September, to that date. I was in the laundry room when I heard her voice. Kelly, not panicked, not scared, but different. I dried my hands quickly and walked back toward the kitchen. Emily was standing by the counter, the calendar in front of her. Open. My stomach dropped instantly. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were fixed on the page, on the red circle, on the words. "Don't forget." "I was just looking," she said finally. Something about the way she said it told me that wasn't entirely true. I walked closer, my heart beating faster with each step. "It's nothing important," I said. "Just an old calendar." She looked up at me then, and for the first time since she had come into my life, there was something sharp in her eyes. "Then why is this circled?" she asked. My throat tightened. It was just a reminder, I said. For what? I hesitated. And that hesitation was enough. Emily noticed everything. "You don't circle something like this for no reason," she said quietly. "It was a long time ago," I replied. "That doesn't answer the question." Her voice wasn't raised. The question, her voice wasn't raised. But it was firm. And something inside me shifted. Because this wasn't the careful, quiet child who tried not to take up space. This was someone searching, someone who wasn't going to stop. "It's just a day that it was firm," and something inside me shifted. Because this wasn't the careful, quiet child who tried not to take up space. This was someone searching, someone who wasn't going to stop. "It's just a date," I said. "No," she said, her fingers pressed lightly against the page. "It's not." Silence filled the room. I could feel the distance between us changing, not shrinking, but transforming into something else. Something more dangerous. "What happened that day?" she asked. I opened my mouth and closed it again. Because there it was, the moment I had been avoiding, the moment I knew would come. "I don't think you need to worry about that," I said finally. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. "Why not?" she asked. "Because it's in the past." "So am I," she said. The words hit harder than anything she had said before. I stared at her. What do you mean? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she stepped back directly. Instead, she stepped back slightly, crossing her arms. You said I came to you because I needed a safe place, she said. That something happened before. Yes, but you never told me what. I swallowed. We were going to, when you were older, I am older, crossing her arms. You said I came to you because I needed a safe place, she said. That something happened before. Yes, but you never told me what. I swallowed. We were going to, when you were older, I am older, she interrupted. Her voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it now. Frustration. And I keep asking? She continued. But you keep giving me answers that don't mean anything. That's not true, I said. It is, she replied. Her eyes moved back to the calendar. To you, maybe this is just a date, she said. But I can tell it's not. I took a step closer. Emily. You said you got a call? She continued, her voice steady. From a woman named Linda. Yes. And that's how you found me? Yes. She nodded slowly. Then why does this date look like you already knew something was going to happen? The question froze me in place, because that was exactly what it looked like, and I didn't have an explanation that wouldn't unravel everything. It was like I was standing in a room full of mirrors, and every reflection was a different version of median that wouldn't unravel everything. It doesn't mean that, I said quickly. Then what does it mean? I couldn't answer, and she saw that. You're hiding something, she said. The words weren't loud, but they landed like something heavy. I'm not. Yes, you are, she said. Her voice didn't shake, didn't break. But there was something in it now that I hadn't heard before. Hurt. Not the kind that cries, the kind that hardens. I thought you said I could trust you, she added quietly. That hurt more than anything else. You can, I said. Then tell me the truth. I looked at her, at the girl who had walked into my life without warning, who had taken my hand without hesitation, who had trusted me before I had even earned it. And now I was the one breaking that trust. I just need a little more time, I said softly. She shook her head. No, she said. Her fingers lifted from the calendar. You've had time? Silence, heavy, unforgiving. If you won't tell me, she said slowly, her eyes locking onto mine again. I'll find out myself. There it was, the same words, but this time they felt different, more certain, more dangerous. Emily. She closed the calendar, firmly. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Then she picked it up and held it for a moment, as if weighing something, before setting it back down on the counter. I'm not a child anymore, she said quietly, and then she turned and walked away. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. I stood there staring at the calendar, my hands trembling slightly, because I knew what was coming next. Emily wasn't the kind of person who let things go. She would ask questions. She would look for answers. She would dig. And when she did, she wouldn't just find the truth. She would find everything. The phone call, the night, the decision, the things I had done, and the things I had never told anyone. I reached out slowly and touched the cover of the calendar. September 14th. For years, it had been something I carried alone, a memory, a secret, a promise. But now, it wasn't just mine anymore, and I had a feeling that before long, it was going to tear everything apart. Emily didn't ask me another question that night. That was what scared me the most. Not the confrontation, not the way her voice had changed, but the silence that followed. It wasn't the same silence as before. The careful, quiet, observant stillness she had carried with her when she first arrived. This was different. This silence had intention. I felt it in the way she moved through the house that evening. The way she didn't linger near me in the kitchen. The way she went to her room without asking for anything. The distance was subtle, but it was there. And I had created it. The next morning, everything felt off. Emily was already at the table when I came into the kitchen. She had poured her own cereal. Too much milk this time. It was a small thing, but it told me everything. "Good morning," I said softly. "Morning," she replied, not looking up. "No, thank you." No hesitation. Just distance. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. "Did you sleep okay?" I asked. She nodded. Yes. That was it. No elaboration, no softness, just an answer. David walked in a few minutes later, sensing the tension almost immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked, glancing between us. "Yeah," I said quickly. Emily didn't respond. David sat down, watching her carefully. "You got plans today?" he asked her, trying to sound casual. "I'm staying here," she said. Something about the way she said it made me look at her more closely. "Do you want to go out later?" I asked. "Maybe the park." She shook her head. "I have things to do." My chest tightened. What kind of things? She finally looked up at me, and for a brief moment, I saw it again. That sharpness. "I want to understand something," she said. I froze. David leaned back slightly in his chair, sensing the shift. "Understand what?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up her spoon and stirred the cereal slowly. Then, "That date," she said. There it was, again. "Emily." "No," she interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "You said you needed time." I nodded. "Yes, I gave you time." My stomach dropped. "It's only been one day." It's dropped. "It's only been one day." "It's been years for you," she said. The words landed harder than I expected. "And you still didn't tell me." David glanced at me, confused now. "What date?" he asked. I didn't answer, and Emily noticed. "You didn't tell him been years for you," she said. The words landed harder than I expected. "And you still didn't tell me." David glanced at me, confused now. "What date?" he asked. I didn't answer, and Emily noticed. "You didn't tell him," she asked quietly. The room went still. "Tell me what," David said, his tone sharper now. I swallowed. "It's nothing. It's not nothing," Emily said. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through everything. "There's a date in her calendar." She continued, looking at David now. "September 14th. It's circled in red, and it says, 'Don't forget.'" David's eyes shifted to me. "Kelly." I felt the walls closing in. "It's just something from the past," I said. "What from the past?" he asked. I hesitated, and that hesitation was enough. "Why didn't you tell me?" he pressed. "I didn't think it mattered." "You didn't think it mattered?" His voice was incredulous now. "Emily is asking questions, and you're telling me there's something you've been hiding this whole time?" "I wasn't hiding it," I said quickly. "Then what were you doing?" he demanded. Emily watched both of us, quiet, observing, just like before. But now she wasn't trying to disappear. She was watching us unravel. "I just didn't think it was relevant, I said weakly. David stood up slowly. Anything connected to her is relevant, he said. I don't know if it is connected, I replied. Emily's gaze snapped back to me. But you think it is, she said. I didn't answer, because she was right. I did think that. I just didn't want to admit it. Kelly, David said, his voice quieter now but more intense. What happened on that date? I looked at both of them, the man I had promised honesty to, and the girl who had trusted me before she even knew me. And suddenly, there was nowhere left to hide. I don't know everything, I said slowly, but I know enough. Then say it, Emily said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was something worse, determined. I took a breath, and for the first time I said part of the truth out loud. That date was the night I got the call about you. Silence, complete, absolute. Emily didn't move. David didn't speak. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. You circled the date before you got the call, David asked finally. Yes, that's not possible. I know. Emily stood up slowly. Her chair scraped softly against the floor. But it happened, she said. Her voice was steady, too steady. And you don't know why? I shook my head. No. She stared at me for a long moment, as if searching for something deeper than my words. Then she said, I think you do. The accusation wasn't loud, but it hit harder than anything else. I don't, I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was completely true, because there had been something about that night, something I had never fully explained, even to myself. Then we find out, Emily said. David looked at her. How? She turned toward the hallway. Because if someone gave me her name, she said, then someone knows why. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, I realized something I hadn't fully allowed myself to see before. This wasn't just about memory, or coincidence, or even fate. There was a person behind this, someone who had written my name, someone who had connected us, deliberately. And if that was true, then the truth wasn't buried in the past. It was waiting, somewhere, for us to find it. Emily walked toward her room. I'm not stopping, she said quietly. Not until I know everything. The door closed behind her, and the house fell into silence again. But this time, it wasn't fragile. It was breaking. David turned to me slowly. You need to tell me everything, he said. I nodded, because now I didn't have a choice. I had spent years convincing myself that the past was contained, that it lived quietly in the corners of my memory, tucked away where it couldn't hurt anyone else, that if I didn't speak it out loud, it wouldn't reach beyond me. I was wrong. David didn't wait long. The moment Emily's door closed, he turned to me with a look I hadn't seen in years. Not anger. Not exactly. But something sharper. Something more personal. You're going to tell me everything, he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. Because there was no point in pretending anymore. Sit down, I said quietly. We moved into the living room, the same place where we had spent so many evenings in comfortable silence. But tonight, there was nothing comfortable about it. I held the calendar in my hands again, staring at that red circle, like it might somehow explain itself if I looked long enough. It started years ago, I said. David didn't interrupt. He just listened. I was volunteering, I continued. At a shelter. Not officially, not anything permanent. Just helping out where I could. That's not unusual for you, he said. No, I agreed. It wasn't. I took a breath. But there was a girl there. The words felt heavier than I expected. David leaned forward slightly. What girl? I don't know her name, I admitted. Not really. She never gave it consistently. Sometimes she said one thing, sometimes another. David frowned. Like Emily. Yes. Silence stretched between us. She was quiet, I continued. Observant. Always watching. Just like Emily. I paused, because saying it out loud made it feel more real, more connected. Did she have family? David asked. Not that anyone could confirm, I said. There were reports, neighbors, concerns, but nothing concrete. What happened to her? I swallowed. That's the problem. David's expression tightened. What do you mean I stopped going? I said. The words came out softer than I intended. Why, life got busy, I replied. Work responsibilities? I told myself I'd go back, that it wasn't a big deal if I missed a few weeks. David didn't say anything, but I could feel the judgment behind his silence. And then one day, I continued, my voice quieter. Now I heard that she was gone. Gone. How they said she had been taken from the home. I said. Authorities got involved. There was an incident. My hands tightened around the calendar. I didn't ask enough questions, I admitted. I didn't follow up. I just let it go. David exhaled slowly. Kelly, I told myself it wasn't my responsibility. I said that there were people better equipped to handle it. I looked up at him, but I never forgot her. The room fell quiet, and the date he asked. I nodded toward the calendar. That was the day I heard she disappeared. David stared at me. You circled it to remember. Yes. And wrote, don't forget. I nodded again. I didn't want to lose that moment, I said. The feeling that I had abandoned something important. David leaned back slowly. So this has nothing to do with Emily? He asked. I hesitated, because that was the question I had been trying to answer myself. I don't know, I said honestly, but it feels connected. How he pressed. I shook my head. I don't know yet. David ran a hand over his face. Kelly, you're telling me that years ago you met a child who disappeared, and now a different child shows up with your name written on a piece of paper. Yes. And you don't see how that sounds? I do, I said. Then say it. I looked at him, because I knew what he was asking. What if it's not a coincidence? I said quietly. The words settled heavily between us. David didn't respond immediately. Because once you say something like that, you can't take it back. You think Emily is that girl? He asked finally. I don't know, I said again. But the way she looks at me, I trailed off. You feel like you've met her before, he finished. Yes. David shook his head slightly. That's not enough. I know, but it's not nothing either. Silence. Long, uncomfortable, and the note he asked. That's what I can't explain, I admitted. Someone had to give her my name, or she heard it somewhere, he suggested. Maybe I said, but then why hold on to it? Why carry it with her? David didn't have an answer. Neither did I. And there's something else, I added quietly. He looked at me. What? The night I got the call, I said. My voice dropped. I had already circled the date. David frowned. You said that, but I didn't tell you why. I took a slow breath. I didn't just circle it because I remembered her. Then why? Because I had a feeling, I said. The words sounded strange even as I said them. What kind of feeling, he asked. Like something was coming, I admitted. David stared at me. That doesn't make sense. I know, but it was there. I closed my eyes briefly. I couldn't explain it. I still can't. The room went quiet again. And this time, it felt different, heavier. Because now everything was out in the open. Everything I had kept to myself for years. Everything Emily had forced me to confront. What are we supposed to do with this? David asked finally. I opened my eyes. We find out the truth, I said. How? We start with Linda, I replied. She might have more information about where Emily came from, and if she doesn't, then we keep looking. David studied me. You're serious about this? Yes. He nodded slowly. Then we need to be careful. I know. No, he said. I mean, really careful. Because if this is more than coincidence... He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. I understood. Emily deserves the truth, I said. David looked toward the hallway, and so do we. So, later that night, I stood outside Emily's door, my hand hovering just above the handle. I could hear her moving inside, not sleeping, not resting, thinking. Just like me, I knocked softly. Emily. There was a pause. Then, come in. I opened the door slowly. She was sitting on the bed, her knees pulled close again, her eyes watching me carefully. Different now. Not distant, not closed off, but guarded. I told David, I said quietly. Her expression didn't change. Everything I know. She nodded. Good. I stepped closer. There's more we need to find out, I added. I know. Her voice was steady. And we will, I said. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she asked, Do you remember her? The question caught me off guard. Who the girl? She said. The one from before. I hesitated. Yes, I said softly. I remember her. Emily's gaze didn't waver. What did she look like? My heart skipped, because suddenly the room felt smaller, the air heavier, and something deep inside me, something I had been avoiding, started to rise. She had dark hair, I said slowly, thin, quiet, always watching. Emily didn't blink. Like me, she asked. The question hung in the air, and for the first time I couldn't tell if I was looking at a child or at a memory I had never truly let go of. I had spent years convincing myself that the past was contained, that it lived quietly in the corners of my memory tucked away where it couldn't hurt anyone else. That if I didn't speak it out loud, it wouldn't reach beyond me. I was wrong. David didn't wait long. The moment Emily's door closed, he turned to me with a look I hadn't seen in years. Not anger. Not exactly. But something sharper. Something more personal. You're going to tell me everything, he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly, because there was no point in pretending anymore. Sit down, I said quietly. We moved into the living room, the same place where we had spent so many evenings in comfortable silence. But tonight, there was nothing comfortable about it. I held the calendar in my hands again, staring at that red circle, like it might somehow explain itself if I looked long enough. It started years ago, I said. David didn't interrupt. He just listened. I was volunteering, I continued, at a shelter. Not officially, not anything permanent, just helping out where I could. That's not unusual for you, he said. No, I agreed. It wasn't. I took a breath. But there was a girl there. The words felt heavier than I expected. David leaned forward slightly. What girl? I don't know her name? I admitted, not really. She never gave it consistently. Sometimes she said one thing, sometimes another. David frowned. Like Emily. Yes. Silence stretched between us. She was quiet. I continued. Observant. Always watching. Just like Emily. I paused, because saying it out loud made it feel more real, more connected. Did she have family? David asked. Not that anyone could confirm, I said. There were reports, neighbors, concerns, but nothing concrete. What happened to her? I swallowed. That's the problem. David's expression tightened. What do you mean I stopped going? I said. The words came out softer than I intended. Why life got busy, I replied. Work responsibilities, I told myself. I'd go back. That it wasn't a big deal if I missed a few weeks. The words came out softer than I intended. Why life got busy, I replied. Work responsibilities. I told myself I'd go back. That it wasn't a big deal if I missed a few weeks. David didn't say anything, but I could feel the judgment behind his silence. And then one day, I continued, my voice quieter. Now I heard that she was gone. Gone? How? They said she had been taken from the home, I said. Authorities got involved. There was an incident. My hands tightened around the calendar. I didn't ask enough questions, I admitted. I didn't follow up. I just let it go. David exhaled slowly. Kelly. I told myself it wasn't my responsibility, I said. That there were people better equipped to handle it. I looked up at him. But I never forgot her. The room fell quiet. And the date, he asked. I nodded toward the calendar. That was the day I heard she disappeared. David stared at me. You circled it to remember. Yes. And wrote, don't forget. I nodded again. I didn't want to lose that moment, I said. The feeling that I had abandoned something important. David leaned back slowly. So this has nothing to do with Emily, he asked. I hesitated, because that was the question I had been trying to answer myself. I don't know, I said honestly. But it feels connected, how he pressed. I shook my head. I don't know yet. David ran a hand over his face. Kelly, you're telling me that years ago, you met a child who disappeared, and now a different child shows up with your name written on a piece of paper. Yes, and you don't see how that sounds. I do, I said. Then say it. I looked at him, because I knew what he was asking. What if it's not a coincidence? I said quietly. The words settled heavily between us. David didn't respond immediately. Because once you say something like that, you can't take it back. You think Emily is that girl? He asked finally. I don't know, I said again. But the way she looks at me. I trailed off. Way. She looks at me. I trailed off. You feel like you've met her before, he finished. Yes. David shook his head slightly. That's not enough, I know. But it's not nothing either. Silence, long, uncomfortable, and the note you feel like you've met her before he finished. Yes. David shook his head slightly. That's not enough. I know, but it's not nothing either. Silence, long, uncomfortable, and the note he asked. That's what I can't explain, I admitted. Someone had to give her my name, or she heard it somewhere he suggested. Maybe I said, but then why hold on to it? Why carry it with her? David didn't have an answer. Neither did I. And there's something else, I added quietly. He looked at me. What? The night I got the call, I said. My voice dropped. I had already circled the date. David frowned. You said that, but I didn't tell you why. I took a slow breath. I didn't just circle it because I remembered her. Then why? Because I had a feeling, I said. The words sounded strange even as I said them. What kind of feeling, he asked. Like something was coming, I admitted. David stared at me. That doesn't make sense. I know, but it was there. I closed my eyes briefly. I couldn't explain it. I still can't. The room went quiet again, and this time it felt different, heavier. Because now everything was out in the open. Everything I had kept to myself for years. Everything Emily had forced me to confront. What are we supposed to do with this? David asked finally. I opened my eyes. We find out the truth, I said. How? We start with Linda, I replied. She might have more information about where Emily came from. And if she doesn't, then we keep looking. I opened my eyes. We find out the truth, I said. How? We start with Linda, I replied. She might have more information about where Emily came from. And if she doesn't, then we keep looking. David studied me. You're serious about this? Yes. He nodded slowly. Then we need to be careful. I know. No, he said. I mean really careful. Because if this is more than coincidence. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. I understood. Emily deserves the truth, I said. David looked toward the hallway, and so do we. Later that night, I stood outside Emily's door, my hand hovering just above the handle. I could hear her moving inside, not sleeping, not resting, thinking, just like me. I knocked softly. Emily. There was a pause. Then, come in. I opened the door slowly. She was sitting on the bed, her knees pulled close again, her eyes watching me carefully. Different now. Not distant, not closed off, but guarded. I told David, I said quietly. Her expression didn't change. Everything I know. She nodded. Good. I stepped closer. There's more we need to find out, I added. I know. Her voice was steady. And we will, I said. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she asked, Do you remember her? The question caught me off guard. Who the girl? She said, the one from before. I hesitated. Yes, I said softly. I remember her. Emily's gaze didn't waver. What did she look like? My heart skipped, because suddenly, the room felt smaller, the air heavier, and something deep inside me, something I had been avoiding, started to rise. She had dark hair. I said slowly, thin, quiet, always watching. Emily didn't blink. Like me, she asked. The question hung in the air, and for the first time I couldn't tell if I was looking at a child or at a memory I had never truly let go of. Yes, I whispered. The word hung in the air longer than it should have. Emily didn't react right away. She just watched me. Not like a child waiting for reassurance, but like someone waiting for confirmation. For a long time, I thought she was just another child passing through. I continued slowly. Someone I couldn't help, someone I wasn't meant to keep. My voice faltered, but I never forgot her. Emily tilted her head slightly. How old was she? She asked. About your age, I said. And what happened to her? She pressed. I hesitated, because even now, even after everything I had already admitted, there were still parts I hadn't said out loud. They said she was taken, I replied. Authorities intervened, something about her home life being unsafe. Emily's eyes didn't leave mine. Did you see her again? No. Did you try? The question hit deeper than the others. I swallowed. I told myself I would, I admitted, but I didn't. Why I looked down at my hands? Because there wasn't a version of the truth that made me look better. I was afraid, I said quietly. Of what? That it wouldn't matter. I answered. That she would already be gone. Or that I wouldn't be able to help even if I found her. Emily was silent, taking it in, processing it. And you just let her disappear? She asked. Her tone wasn't accusing, but it still felt like it. Yes, I said. The word barely came out. Silence settled between us again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of something heavy, something neither of us could ignore. What if that girl was me? Emily asked. The question hit like a shockwave. I felt it in my chest, in my throat, in the sudden tightness in the room. I don't know if she was, I said carefully, but it's possible. Emily's gaze didn't waver. How? I exhaled slowly. Because the timing fits, I said. The way you act, the way you observe things, the way you knew my name. She looked down for a moment, then back up. But I don't remember you, she said. I know. Shouldn't I remember you? Not necessarily, I replied. You were young. And if something happened after that? She looked down for a moment, then back up. But I don't remember you, she said. I know. Shouldn't I remember you? Not necessarily, I replied. You were young, and if something happened after that, if you were moved, or if there was trauma, I let the sentence trail off. Emily nodded slowly, as if she understood more than she should. Then how did I get your name? She asked. That question again, the one that refused to leave. I think someone gave it to you, I said. Who? I don't know yet. She leaned back slightly, her arms wrapping around herself again. But they wanted me to find you, she said. It wasn't a question. It was a realization, and hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. Yes, I said quietly. I think they did. The room felt smaller now, tighter, like the truth was closing in on us from all sides. Then we need to find them, Emily said. Her voice was calm, certain. Whoever it was, they know something. I nodded. We're going to talk to Linda tomorrow, I said. She might have records, information about where you came from. Emily stood up. I want to go with you. I hesitated. It might be, I need to be there, she said. Her tone didn't leave room for argument, and for the first time, I didn't try to argue. Okay, I said. The next morning felt different. Not tense, not quiet, but focused. Emily was already dressed when I came into the kitchen. Not sitting, not waiting, standing, ready. David looked at her, then at me. She insisted. I said softly. He nodded. I figured. The drive to the county office felt longer than usual. Emily sat in the back again, but this time, she wasn't just watching. She was thinking, and I could feel it. Every mile bringing us closer to something we couldn't undo. When we arrived, Linda was already there. She looked surprised to see all three of us. Kelly, she said, standing up. And Emily, I didn't expect you. I need to know where I came from, Emily said. No hesitation. No fear. Linda blinked, then looked at me. I nodded. She deserves answers. Linda hesitated. Some of that information is confidential. Not to me, Emily said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried something undeniable. Linda studied her for a moment, then sighed. All right, she said. Let's sit down. We moved into a small office, the same kind of room where decisions are made quietly, where truths are revealed in pieces. Linda opened a file, thick, worn. This is everything we have, she said. Emily leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the papers. Her name wasn't always Emily, Linda continued. My breath caught. What do you mean? I asked. Linda flipped through a few pages. There were multiple records, she said. Different names, different reports. It made it difficult to track her history. Emily didn't move. Was there a first name? She asked. Linda hesitated, then nodded. Yes. She turned the file slightly, so we could see. And when I read it, the room spun. Because there it was, written in black ink. A name I hadn't seen in years. A name I had buried in memory. A name that connected everything. Evelyn. Emily stared at it. Evelyn? She repeated softly. Linda looked at me. You recognize it? I couldn't speak. Because now there was no doubt left. No room for coincidence. No way to pretend this was anything but what it was. Yes, I said finally. My voice barely steady. That's her. Emily looked up at me, and for the first time, there was something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Not confusion, not distance, but something deeper. Something that felt like recognition. The name stayed in the room long after it was spoken. Evelyn. It echoed in my mind like something unfinished, something that had been waiting years to return. Emily. No. Evelyn sat completely still. Her fingers rested lightly on the edge of the table, but I noticed how they curled slightly inward, as if holding on to something invisible. My name was Evelyn, she said softly, not questioning, not doubting, just stating it. Linda shifted uncomfortably in her chair. That was one of the names listed in your file, she said carefully. There were others, but that one appears the earliest. Emily looked at me. Did you call me that? She asked. My throat tightened. I didn't know your name back then, I admitted. You never stayed long enough in one place for it to matter. She nodded slowly. But you remember me. Yes, and I remembered you, she said. That made my breath catch. What do you mean? I asked. She hesitated, then looked down at her hands. I didn't remember your face, she said quietly. Not clearly, not like this. Her eyes lifted again, meeting mine, but I remembered a feeling. The room went silent. A feeling David asked gently. Emily nodded. Safe, she said. The word landed softly, but it carried weight. Not all the time, she added. But when you were there, it was different. My chest tightened, because that was the part I had forgotten to consider. Not just what I remembered, but what she might have remembered. I didn't know your name, she continued, but someone told me to remember it. Linda leaned forward slightly. Who told you that? Not just what I remembered, but what she might have remembered. I didn't know your name, she continued, but someone told me to remember it. Linda leaned forward slightly. Who told you that? She asked. Emily's brow furrowed. I don't know, she admitted. But I remember a woman. The air shifted instantly. What woman? I asked. She wasn't like the others, Emily said slowly. She didn't talk much, but she always watched me. A chill ran down my spine. Did she work at the shelter? Linda asked. Emily shook her head. I don't think so. Then where did you see her? David asked. Emily hesitated again. And this time, it felt different, like she was reaching for something just out of reach. After she said, After what I asked. After I left, she replied. The room went still. You mean, after you were taken from the home? Linda clarified. Emily nodded. She came to see me, she said. Not all the time, just sometimes. What did she say? I asked. Emily looked at me again, and this time there was something deeper in her eyes. She told me that if I ever got her eyes. She told me that if I ever got the chance, she said slowly, I should find you. My heart stopped. What? I whispered. She said your name. Emily continued, over and over again. The room felt like it was closing in. She said, Kelly Whitman, the chance. She said slowly, I should find you. My heart stopped. What? I whispered. She said your name, Emily continued, over and over again. The room felt like it was closing in. She said Kelly Whitman, Emily added, like it was important. Linda exchanged a glance with David. Did she tell you why? Linda asked. Emily shook her head. No. Did she tell you who she was? Another shake. No. Silence. Heavy. Unsettling. Because now, we weren't just dealing with coincidence. We weren't even dealing with memory anymore. There was a third person, someone who had been watching, someone who had known my name, someone who had guided Emily toward me, deliberately. Do you remember what she looked like? I asked. Emily hesitated, then nodded slowly. She was older, she said. Not old, but not young either. Linda reached for a pen. Hair color? She asked. Brown, Emily said. Maybe darker. It changed sometimes. Eyes? Emily paused. Kind, she said. Linda frowned slightly. That's not very specific, Emily shrugged. It's what I remember. What about anything else? David asked. A name, a place, anything. Emily shook her head again. No. The room fell silent. and I felt something deep inside me begin to shift, because there was something about this, something I couldn't quite place. But it felt familiar, too familiar. "Kelly," David said quietly. I looked at him. "What is it?" I hesitated, because I wasn't sure. Not yet, but the feeling, it was there. "I think I've seen her," I said slowly. Everyone turned to me. "When?" Linda asked. "I don't know," I admitted. Not clearly, but something about the way Emily described her. I trailed off. "Say it," David urged. I swallowed. "There was someone at the shelter," I said. Linda leaned forward. "Someone who worked there?" "No," I said. "Not officially. She wasn't on the staff list." "Then why was she there?" "I don't know," I replied. "But she was always around." Watching Emily asked quietly. I nodded. "Yes." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "That's her," she said. The certainty in her voice sent a chill through me. "You're sure?" Linda asked. Emily nodded again. "Yes." The room felt smaller now, tighter, like the truth was closing in from all sides. "Then we need to find her," David said. Linda hesitated. "That won't be easy," she said. "If she wasn't officially partee of the system, there won't be records." Tighter, like the truth was closing in from all sides. "Then we need to find her," David said. Linda hesitated. "That won't be easy," she said. "If she wasn't officially part of the system, there won't be records. There has to be something." I insisted. "There might be," Linda admitted. "But it could take time." Emily shook her head. "No," she said. Her voice was calm, certain. "She wanted me to find Kelly." She looked at me again. "So she knew this would happen?" The words hung in the air. And for the first time, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. This wasn't just about the past. It wasn't just about a mistake I had made years ago. This was something else. Something that had been set in motion long before that phone call. Long before Emily showed up at my door. And whoever that woman was, she had been waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for Emily to come back. Waiting for me to remember. And now we were all standing in the middle of something much bigger than any of us had understood. I looked at Emily, at Evelyn, at the girl who had carried my name like a thread through years of uncertainty, and I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not confusion, but something stronger. Resolve. "We're going to find her," I said. Emily didn't smile, but she nodded. And this time, there was no hesitation. Because now, we weren't just searching for answers. We were following a path someone else had already started. The moment we left Linda's office, everything felt different, heavier, more real. Because now, we didn't just have a feeling. We had a name. Evelyn. And we had something even more unsettling. Someone had been watching us long before we understood what was happening. The drive home was quiet. Not the fragile silence from before. Not the tense silence filled with unspoken questions. This was something else. A kind of focused quiet. Like all of us were thinking the same thing, but no one was ready to say it out loud. Emily sat in the back seat again, but she wasn't staring out the window this time. She was looking straight ahead, still, composed, but different, more certain, more grounded, as if finding that name had given her something solid to stand on. Evelyn, David said quietly, breaking the silence. Emily didn't flinch. Yes, she replied. Do you want us to call you that? He asked. She thought for a moment, then shook her head. No, she said. Emily is fine. I glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Are you sure? I asked gently. She nodded. That's who I am now, she said. But I needed to know who I was before. The clarity in her voice, it stunned me, because it wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't searching. It was understanding. And that understanding came with something else. Resolve. When we got home, Emily went straight to her room. No hesitation, no questions, just purpose. David watched her go, then turned to me. She's changed, he said quietly. I know. She's not waiting anymore. I know. He exhaled slowly. This is moving fast. It was always going to, I said. We stood there in the hallway for a moment, neither of us speaking, because we both knew we were getting closer to something, and once we reached it, there would be no going back. That evening, Emily came back into the living room holding something in her hands. The calendar. My heart dropped slightly. I want to see it again, she said. Her voice wasn't demanding, but it wasn't asking either. I nodded slowly. Okay. She sat down across from me, placing the calendar on the table between us. Carefully, like it mattered, like it always had. She opened it to September, to that date, September 14th. The red circle stared back at us. Don't forget. Emily traced her finger lightly over the words. You wrote this before you got the call, she said. Yes. Because you were thinking about me. Yes. She nodded slowly. Then that woman knew you were thinking about me. The statement made my chest tighten. What do you mean? I asked. Emily looked up at me. If she was watching, she said, then she knew what you were feeling. David frowned. That's a big assumption. Emily shook her head. No, she said. It's not. Her finger moved back to the date. She told me to find Kelly Whitman. She continued. But she didn't tell me when. Silence. So why that day? She asked. No one answered. Because none of us knew. Or we hadn't allowed ourselves to think about it that way. Emily leaned back slightly, thinking. You circled the date because you remembered me, she said. Yes, and then that same day you got the call. Yes. Her eyes sharpened slightly. That's not random. David crossed his arms. Then what is it? Emily looked at both of us. It's timing, she said. Planned timing. The words hung in the air, heavy, unsettling. Because if she was right, then everything had been set in motion deliberately. You think that woman arranged for you to come to us? I asked. Emily hesitated, then nodded. Yes. David shook his head. That would mean she had access to the system, to records, to placement decisions. Or she knew someone who did, Emily replied. Her voice was calm, logical, like she had already thought this through. And she waited. Emily continued. For the right moment. What moment? I asked. She looked down at the calendar again. The moment you remembered me, she said. My breath caught, because suddenly everything lined up in a way I hadn't seen before. The feeling I had that morning. The reason I circled the date again, the unease I couldn't explain. And then, the call. You think she was waiting for me to remember? I whispered. Emily nodded. Yes. David ran a hand through his hair. That's a lot to assume. Emily didn't argue. She just looked at him. Then why else would she wait? The call. You think she was waiting for me to remember? I whispered. Emily nodded. Yes. David ran a hand through his hair. That's a lot to assume. Emily didn't argue. She just looked at him. Then why else would she wait? She asked. Silence. Because none of us had a better answer. And there's something else, Emily added. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. The same one she had shown me the first day she arrived. My name, written in careful, deliberate letters. Kelly Whitman. I kept this for years, she said. Her voice softened slightly. I didn't even know why. She unfolded it slowly, placing it next to the calendar. Side by side, the past and the present, connected. She told me it mattered, Emily said, and now I know why. I stared at the paper, at my own name, written by someone I had never met, or someone I had forgotten. Kelly, David said quietly. I looked at him. We need to find her, he said. I nodded. Yes. Emily's eyes met mine again. But I think she's already found us, she said. The words sent a chill through me. What do you mean? I asked. Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up slowly and walked toward the front door. I followed her, my heart beating faster with each step. She reached for the handle, paused, then turned back to look at me. If she was waiting this whole time, she said softly, then she wouldn't miss this moment. My breath caught. And then she opened the door, and for a split second, everything felt like it stopped. Because someone was standing there, still, silent, watching. And in that moment, I knew. We hadn't been searching for her. She had been waiting for us. For a moment, no one moved. The woman stood on the porch as if she had always been there. Not knocking, not calling out, just waiting. The way Emily had described her. The way I had half remembered her. Watching. My breath caught in my throat, because the second I saw her face, something inside me recognized her. Not clearly, not completely, but enough. Enough to know this wasn't coincidence. Kelly Whitman, she said softly. My name sounded different coming from her, like she had carried it for years. I stepped forward slowly, my hand still on the door. Who are you? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes moved past me, to Emily, and something shifted in her expression. Not surprise, not relief, but something quieter, something fulfilled. You found her, she said. Emily stepped forward beside me. I didn't find her, she replied. You sent me to her. The woman nodded slowly. Yes. The confirmation sent a ripple through my chest. David moved slightly closer behind me. Why, he asked. The woman looked at him briefly, then back at me. Because she was the only one who would come, she said. My heart skipped. What does that mean? I asked. She exhaled softly, like someone finally setting something down after carrying it too long. It means she said you were the only one who ever saw her. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. I saw her, I whispered. Once the woman replied gently, And you never forgot. The words landed deeper than anything else she had said. Who are you? I asked again. This time she answered. My name is Margaret Hale, she said. The name didn't immediately register, but something about it, something faint, familiar. I worked in the system, she continued. Not always officially, not always where I was supposed to be. Linda's words echoed in my mind. No records, no official presence, always around, watching. You were at the shelter, I said slowly. Margaret nodded. Yes, and you followed her after David asked. Yes, why he pressed. Margaret looked at Emily, then back at me. Because no one else did, she said. The simplicity of the answer made my chest tighten. I couldn't adopt her, she continued. I couldn't take Agir in, not legally, but I could watch. Because no one else did, she said. The simplicity of the answer made my chest tighten. I couldn't adopt her, she continued. I couldn't take her in, not legally, but I could watch. Emily's voice came quietly. You came to see me. Margaret nodded. When I could, she said. When they moved you, when they changed your name, when they tried to make you disappear into the system. Emily's fingers curled slightly at her sides. You told me to remember her name, she said. Yes, why? Margaret's gaze shifted back to me. Because she already remembered you, she said. My breath caught. You were the only person who looked at her like she mattered. Margaret continued. I felt something break open inside me. I left, I said. My voice cracked. I didn't come back. Margaret stepped closer. But you never forgot, she said again. And that mattered more than you think. Tears blurred my vision. I should have done more, I whispered. Yes, Margaret said gently. You should have. The honesty didn't hurt. It healed, because for the first time, someone wasn't letting me hide from it. But you didn't disappear, she added. You carried her with you, even when you didn't realize it. She gestured toward the calendar. The date, she said. I knew you would remember. How? I asked. Margaret gave a small, knowing smile. Because people like you don't forget the things that break their hearts, she said. Silence. Then Emily stepped forward. You waited, she said. Margaret nodded. Yes. For years, yes. For this moment, yes. Emily looked at her carefully. And you knew she would come for me? Margaret's eyes softened. I hoped, she said. Then she looked at me again. And I trusted that when the moment came, you would listen. I thought about that morning, the feeling I couldn't explain, the reason I circled the date again, the pull I couldn't ignore. You arranged the call, I said. Margaret hesitated, then nodded. I made sure the right person made it, she said. The truth settled made it, she said. The truth settled heavily in the air. You planned all of this, David said. Margaret shook her head. No, she said. I just kept the door open. Silence, long, but not uncomfortable, not anymore, because now, heavily in the air. You planned all of this, David said. Margaret shook her head. No, she said. I just kept the door open. Silence. Long, but not uncomfortable. Not anymore, because now everything made sense. Emily looked at me, and for the first time, there was no distance, no doubt, just something steady, something real. You didn't leave me? She said softly. My chest tightened. I thought I did. I replied. She shook her head. No, she said. You came back. That was the moment everything changed. Not the truth, not the past, but the way we understood it. I stepped forward and pulled her into my arms. And this time, she didn't hesitate. Later that evening, the house felt different. Not heavy, not quiet, but full. Margaret had left after a while. Not dramatically, not with final words, just a quiet goodbye. Like someone who had finished what they came to do. Emily sat beside me on the couch, close, not because she had to be, but because she wanted to. I'm still Emily, she said softly. I smiled. You can be both, I said. She nodded. And you're still Kelly, she added. I laughed quietly. I hope so. She leaned her head against my shoulder. And for the first time, there was no tension, no distance, no unanswered question standing between us. Just peace. I still keep the calendar. I don't hide it anymore. September 14th is still circled. But now when I look at it, I don't see regret. I don't see something I failed to do. I see something else. A moment that refused to be forgotten. A thread that held two lives together across years of silence. A reminder that sometimes the things we think we lost find their way back to us if we're willing to listen. Sometimes life doesn't give us second chances in obvious ways. It doesn't always come with clear signs or perfect timing. Often it comes quietly hidden in small moments, in things we almost throw away and memories we try to ignore. For me, it was an old calendar, a single date, and a feeling I couldn't explain. For years, I believed that I had failed someone who needed me, that I had walked away from something important and could never make it right again. But life has a way of surprising us, not by erasing our mistakes, but by giving us the opportunity to face them, to understand them, and if we're brave enough to do better. Emily didn't come into my life by accident, and neither did the truth. What matters isn't that we always make the right choices the first time. What matters is what we do when we're given another chance. Do we ignore it, or do we finally listen? If this story meant something to you, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had a moment from your past come back in a way you didn't expect? Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it.